Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. On behalf of International Airport Review and Simpleway, I would like to thank you all for attending today. I will be your moderator, Roy Manuel, and I am the Junior Editor at International Airport Review. Today's speaker will be Petr Otoupal, the CEO at Simpleway. Following his presentation, we will then move on to a live question and answer session where you can pose questions to today's speaker. Please remember, throughout, you can submit questions at any point during the webinar using the Ask a Question panel situated on the left-hand side of your screen. So, without hesitation, may I pass you over to today's keynote speaker, Petr Otoupal. Take it away, Petr.
Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you, Roy, for the introduction. I also would like to welcome everyone who joined us today and thank the International Airport Review for hosting this webinar. So again, my name is Petr Otoupal. I am the CEO and one of the founders or founding members of Simpleway. We are going to start with just a bit of an introduction about our company before we dive into the subject. So our company was founded in the year 2005, and our specialty is software for communicating with passengers. We started off with airports, but evolved into a provider of passenger communication systems for all kinds of transportation. Our key competencies and key knowledge consist of airport, metro, railway, public transportation knowledge. We understand devices and systems integration, such as displays, LED, LCD panels, e-papers, public address, voice announcement system, e-paper, such as the stuff that you're starting to see in bus stops these days, fire alarms, emergency systems, all sorts of industrial devices. Data integration is something that we also have to look into during every hour project. We need to understand airport operational databases, resource management system, gate management systems, train control systems, airline systems, social networks, messaging gateways, you name it. We've probably had to interface with it during one of our projects. A big thing that we work on are languages. We solve language issues for our clients worldwide. And using all of this knowledge, we build passenger communication systems. On a higher level, what this really means is that we get the data in through the data interfaces and transform them using business rules and content management into information for passengers through all possible channels. And we do that all through one unified passenger information system. A bit of our clients. Our clients come from all regions and range from large airports, airlines, to small metro operators. These are just a couple of examples for the purpose of this presentation. All of these clients sought us out to address the challenges associated with rising numbers of international passengers flowing through their facilities. We help them by automating their processes and augmenting their language abilities using various components of our software, the automated voice announcement system, flight information display systems, and mobile notification systems. We have done this in all of the common languages as English, including various accents, Chinese, Arabic, German. We also have experience with some of the rather unusual languages, such as Tongan or Samoan, for some of our special clients. I think we are up to 40 languages right now, and new ones are still being added every year. Within the next slide, I'd like to talk a bit about the past, present, and future of passenger communications as we see it. So, in the past, what we saw was a lot of static and maybe even analog information. All the information was printed. What you were seeing were printed signs, and the problem was that there was zero flexibility during irregular situations, which turned out to be very stressful for the staff. There were no real-time information updates at all. You had zero automation, and everything had to be done manually. This did work historically, but as air travel became more affordable and the passenger numbers had rose to higher levels, passenger communications also had to evolve. Today, the story is different. We are living in a digital world. We have real-time updates, left, right, and center. Static signage is being replaced with LCD, LED panels, and it is used for all sorts of contents, for passenger updates, flight information display system, gate information display systems, and baggage, and of course advertisements, and also to create ancillary revenue. Public address systems have the ability to do automated voice announcement of all sorts. Then we see mobile integration. We can receive our boarding passes on our mobile phones. We receive flight information, flight updates, all of those things packaged into SMS, email, or mobile applications. Another thing which is taking off and has been taking on for a while now is geolocation, indoor navigation, proximity marketing, and generally stuff that you can pull off using iBeacons. It's very neat, especially from a wayfinding perspective, if you can see where you are at the airport and how do you get actually to your gate. And I would say one of the newest things as far as passenger communications go is chatbots. It's a really new, interesting development with all the natural language processing, and it shows great promise to help out the customer services staff. A huge potential benefit with chatbots is the ability to service foreign language speakers in languages that the staff might not be able to do. So all of these information channels are used nowadays, but unfortunately in a rather disconnected and efficient manner. Setting it all up to behave according to the airport's business rules is a challenge, and content management for all those disconnected channels is a challenge as well. And I would say one of the biggest challenges is actually maintaining all of those systems and their integrations. If you look at any change that you need to do because you introduce a new process within your airport, this will impact all of those disconnected systems, and you have to basically go and make all those changes individually, which obviously boosts all the expenses associated with any change. Going forward in the future, what we will see will be more personalized communication with the passenger. We will see it done in your mother tongue, in the language you understand, or one of the languages you understand. We'll see personalized boarding, or that's at least a thing that I would definitely love to see, to be summoned to a gate through a notification for just-in-time boarding, so I wouldn't have to wait in the lineup. I think at this point where you have the ability to do personalized communication, it's almost unnecessary, and it's a shame that these things aren't really used properly at this point in time. And all the information will be provided based on the time, place, and situation in which the passenger is. Will receive real-time synchronized updates through all possible channels. What we hope to see and what has to happen for this whole concept to work will be centralized content management, not just from the perspective of managing the content for all the separate information channels like your website, your mobile application, and public address system, display systems. You have to obviously manage all those at the same time, and ideally from the same place, but also from a multi-tenant perspective, because ultimately it is not just you using this content management and content, but it is actually all the tenants and the users at the airport operations, customer services, airlines, and the retail chains that you might have. All of these, if they had the tools, would like to work with these things to help again boost your revenue and their revenue, obviously. But for all this to work, a lot of automation will have to be included, especially with all the real-time scenarios and all the changes happening on a regular or bigger airport. You have to have business rules, because there is no way you can manage all of that flow and all of these things as a human person, or even multiple operators, and they might do a lot of mistakes. Now I would move on into the next part. So how to design the passenger experience. So based on the experience from road projects, we came to understand that the only way to do passenger communication really efficiently is by using all possible channels. Because you never know if the passenger's cell phone battery died, if he is in an area without any displays or public address or something like that. Therefore, it is really desirable to use all possible channels, especially in time pressure situations such as lost passengers and those, because those seem to create the most impact and delays and all of those things. Another important thing is that with the rise of international travel, the demands are growing on the staff to be able to communicate in many foreign languages. This is a challenge which needs to be solved to provide great passenger experience. Another one is kind of obvious. All information should be provided in a timely manner. If it is not, it leads to confusion and operational issues, which we all know it's true. Information issued late is actually worse than not receiving that information at all. A quiet airport, this is a big thing that's been talked about for quite a while. What we're really talking about here is efficient communication, not silent. So some of airports are trying to get away without using any announcements at all, really trying to create a quiet and serene environment. And oh boy, what kind of chaos it can actually create. If you're not receive any message through the PA, there's a lot of missed flights, and we've actually been there in person a couple of times during our travels around the world. Efficient wayfinding. So wayfinding is one of the key issues when it comes to passenger communication or passenger navigation through the airport. The good thing is that lots of this has progressed. There's a lot of progress in this area. Again, a lot of the things have changed from static to dynamic. We see interesting things being implemented, interactive kiosks, maps on website, flight information display systems with map, mobile maps, indoor navigation. Again, that's a thing that is very, very helpful. And we hope to soon arrive in a world where the last passenger will be a thing of the past. It will probably take quite a bit to get there, but we see a lot of progress in this area. What we hope to see more of in the future is dynamic wayfinding for better queue and passenger flow management, also for emergencies. So what this, for instance, means is that, say that at my airport, I have 3 security checkpoints, 3 lineups for X-rays, and I can effectively create dynamic wayfinding signage on my LCD screens, which will react to the amount of people from in front of those security checkpoints waiting there, and basically load balance or manage the queue levels at each of those checkpoints, which helps a lot. On the other hand, if we look at another scenario where there is any sort of emergency, be it a fire or a hurricane or anything like that, you can, if you have the ability, very effectively turn this dynamic signage to point you to, let's say, the nearest hurricane shelter or to the nearest fire or emergency exit, and that can potentially save lives. We unfortunately don't see these abilities used much. We hope to, and we definitely work on a lot of those things to be able to do that. As far as on-time service and quick and speedy boarding goes, efficient passenger communication means quick and speedy boarding, no lost passengers, which ultimately leads to on-time service, which is something we all care about. And studies show that passenger communications is one of the best tools an airport operator can use to help improve on-time performance. Regarding customer services, despite the fact that the software and technology is constantly improving, it can never replace all the hardworking customer service people. Technology can, however, make their lives much easier by decreasing the burden through automation, freeing up their hands to provide great customer services during all sorts of situations. If you look at any given scenario at an airport, be that a boarding procedure or anything like that, there's so much things which are generic and they follow a process, and the customer services people still have to do a lot of those things manually. Whereas if they free their hands, they will be actually able to do a better job. They will be much nicer. They will be doing just a better job and making all the passengers' lives much, much nicer. Okay, now we'd like to move on into the next section, place, time, language. So from our experience, we came to find that there's a couple of key factors for efficient passenger communications. Any information has to be provided at the right place. What this really means is that the information has to be accessible in a way that suits the passenger and the situation. Regarding time, it is paramount that the information is available in a timely manner and it's instantly updated however the situation may change. And finally, what good is any information when you don't understand the language? And I'm sure you all agree. As the importance of the message and generally the stress level of the situation grows, this becomes even more apparent. And in an ideal world, all information would reach the passenger in their native tongue. And to better frame these challenges, we came up with this simple, fun model to think about them, which we refer to as PETAL, place, time, and language. Try to keep it always in mind when you're thinking about passenger experience at your airport. For any given scenario, did I look at how does it work for place, time, and language? Do I receive the right information? And if you do that, we think that we all would have our travel experiences much better. Now, I'd like to dive a bit into the business case for creating a good passenger experience. So there's a couple of things that I would like to mention. A flight delay, typically, according to the statistics, costs airlines $65 per minute, which accounts for billions of dollars of losses per year. And obviously, one of the key reasons is that passengers get lost or generally arrive late. That leads to delays. So obviously, a good wayfinding and passenger communication solution can help a lot there. If you look at this nice graph, which we have to decide, domestic travel isn't really rising as much as international. And the market projections see this trend to accelerate even more, which ultimately leads us to language requirements again. It is a key factor for the international traveler, and no airport will get away without actually having to implement some sort of help or some sort of tools to actually service the international traveler. If you can't get the staff, which would be talking in all those languages where you might have your flights to, you can get some automation, be that a chatbot or public address system, automated voice announcements. Any of those things will help tremendously. Regarding revenue, as we all know, all airports nowadays are forced to look at ways to increase their ancillary revenue. This means retail and advertisements. And good passenger communication is key to great ancillary revenues. A well-informed passenger is more likely to spend some time in a restaurant or shopping at your duty-free areas. Another example, which is really nice, of how passenger communications can be used to boost revenue is, let's say, in a scenario of a flight delay where a notification can pop up on the display screens and mobile devices informing the passengers of the delay, and not just informing of the delay, but also offering them, for example, a discount coupon in the coffee house near the gate. Why this isn't happening at this point in time? It's such a almost like a cheap thing to implement. I'm almost baffled that nobody has done this so far. In any case, a happy and well-informed passenger is always more likely to return and leave a positive review. Now let's talk about an example from the passenger standpoint. For instance, imagine a Chinese passenger arriving into a North American airport. In the past, the passenger would be probably greeted with displays, announcements, and wayfinding in foreign language they may not understand. I'm sure you all agree this isn't an ideal scenario. The airports are adjusting, but they always lag behind the actual requirement because it obviously costs a lot of money to change these things, especially when it comes to static signage and things like that. Important announcements from the public address at that point in time will appear merely as white noise to them, to the Chinese passenger, and they won't understand the information which is provided to them. You can imagine that this can lead to huge issues, for example, flight delays, and it costs the passengers and airlines a lot of money. And finally, it is quite likely that the staff on hand at the airport won't be able to communicate with them in their native language. So how is this passenger meant to find their connection? Or even how are they able to find their way out of the airport or to the baggage belt? This is a problem every single time. Sometimes it's even a problem in an airport where they speak your language to find the baggage belt, but for a foreign passenger, this is a complete challenge. Thankfully, all these problems can be solved today thanks to implementing good passenger communications and good passenger communication systems. So today, the passenger would arrive at the airport and will see display screens in a variety of languages, and there's a lot of things that you can do to actually optimize such a travel experience, let's say based on the demographic, and for instance, you can change the display screen contents based on the language of the country where they're coming from. That would help tremendously. This can be also the case for the PA system and for the mobile information. Now, if you have all those things in place, important information can be communicated to the passengers in their own language, which they can understand because it's a clear, concise message, and they don't have to decrypt it using Google Translate on the spot or something like that. And I'm sure that you can imagine that from the airport staff perspective, this resolves a huge problem. Otherwise, they will be constantly bombarded with requests from passengers, and obviously they can't be expected to speak every language. That's just not humanly possible. And so I would say, thanks to automation, this is no longer an issue, and the technology is there, and airports, big and small, can enjoy the benefits related to having efficient passenger communications. And now for the takeaways. This is our last slide, then we're going to move on into the questions. So when you are thinking about the passenger experience and designing the passenger experience at your airport, the first thing to do is to identify all the key scenarios in your operations, the regular stuff, your standard boarding flow, all of those things, the irregularities, with the delays, the cancellations, the gate changes, all sorts of operations like this, and also the emergencies, fire alarms, and maybe even worse stuff. And for each scenario, you have to analyze it and in depth to understand what message you need to convey to your passenger, at what place, in which area, what channels can I actually use to communicate that message, in which time, and in what languages, and that's also very important. And once you have this design and have it thought out, you can create an efficient mix of information and channels which should help the passenger. If you do this right, this actually leads to the quiet airport, to the efficiency of communications. You're not creating a noisy environment. You're creating an environment where the passengers have a nice experience or are more likely to spend money in retail and all of those things which we all want to happen. And also, to get this done right, you are going to have to automate as much as possible, and you will need some tools to that. So obviously, you need to choose the right technology and vendor. So this concludes our presentation for now, and I'd like to get some room to the questions. And in case we won't be able to respond to your question during this webinar, we'll get back to you with the response through email. Also, if you have any further questions, please do contact us. We will be more than happy to help you out.
Well, thank you very much, Petr, for that excellent presentation. And we will now move on to the question and answer session of today's webinar, where the speaker will have the opportunity to answer all of your questions. And don't forget, you can still submit any questions you might have using the Ask a Question panel, again situated on the left-hand side of your screen. So let's take a look at the first question we have. And this is, how do I keep my terminals and gates from becoming too noisy as a result of using automated announcements?
Mm-hmm. So this comes back a little bit to what I was saying before. First of all, when you start using automated announcements, you already lowered the baseline of noise which is happening at your terminal. Because when people do manual announcements, there's a lot of problems with intelligibility in the first place. So if you start using an automated announcement system, you're more likely to actually get the message across just doing one message, basically. And then you can focus on which of these messages are really functional, and then I would say the automation comes into play, where you can tie better, based on the automation, the playback of those messages just to the specific scenarios, basically minimizing user error and manual triggering, and so not to create this whole noisy experience.
Okay, brilliant. So the next question we have, are there any particularly innovative approaches for dealing with aviation security that you can talk us through?
So I can mention a couple, although this isn't specifically our domain. I would say the key things which we see these days are A, biometrics, and B, self-boarding e-gaze, e-gates and things like this. This have the potential to accelerate basically the whole flow of the passengers through the airport, very much so. And I hope we will start seeing more of them. I understand that there are various issues with getting these tools in place in different countries because it's sometimes tied to legislation, but let's bring it on. Let's just hope that this can be there quite a lot.
Fantastic. And how is Simpleway different to a digital signage or a digital advertising company, for example?
So I would say we're very much different because we are a platform provider. We do just the software part, and we try to be very good at it. B, we do all sorts of channels to actually communicate with the passengers. And C, our software is very, very specific to transportation, but that's not to say that we can't deal with digital signage. We can do all of those things in one. Whereas from the other side of things, our experience is that trying to use standard digital signage software, for instance, for transportation systems, which are very data intensive, very business rule intensive, and there's a lot of dynamics happening all the time, it can become quite cumbersome, and there will be issues associated with it.
Okay, excellent insight. And our next question is on social media. Evidently, it's a very important kind of aspect of society in general. But how is social media and mobile devices changing? How are they changing passenger experience at the moment in the industry?
So that's actually coming back again. So the future is personalized. So we will see all of those things to change and shift into a more of a personalized manner where you as a passenger will really be treated as an individual during your whole flow through the travel experience. So social is just a medium. On social media can be effectively used for instance, the chatbots, where you can get like all those information and ask some questions, or they can be used for, let's say, general communications, let's say for Twitter, where in the case of something more serious, like a bad weather situation at an airport, you can leverage all those media very effectively to stop people from accumulating at the airport. If you know that you're likely to rack up hours and hours of delays, the best thing you can do is actually to tell people to not come to the airport. And as far as mobile stuff, I think this is ultimately where this will open up a lot, because as I was talking before, if you take the fact in consideration that when you're, let's say, a mobile app user, the airport operator actually can pinpoint you, or the airline can pinpoint you, then they could really work through different ways how to work with the passenger experience and tailor it to the, let's say, where you are, what sort of loyalty program part are you in, and all of those things to create something which is really customized, and you basically pop up at the gate and then straight board because it was just structured in such a way.
Okay, great answer. And we have our next question is a question more to do with the silent airport that you mentioned. What precisely do you mean by the silent airport is the next question.
Quiet airport. Is that what you meant? So
quiet airport.
Yeah. So the term you hear in the market or from the customers is a quiet airport policy. That means to make as little announcements or even audible noise as possible. Whereas what I meant with silent airport is no announcements at all. And as some of us know, this doesn't really work. So a quiet airport is a policy which is something that can be effectively implemented by good passenger communication systems, by a good setup, by good automation. Silent airport, you just take everything silent, and then you hope for things to work out, and it doesn't work that great. doesn't work that great.
So our next question is quite a long one, so I'm going to split it into two. And it goes back to using devices like smartphones and tablets. And they're very popular, but the question asks, what about the passengers who don't use these new technologies?
So this is something that you have to deal with going forward. The old communication channels, such as the displays and the static signage and the public address, are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. And to think that they would be taken over magically by mobile phones and tablets, it's naive, because your tablet can run out of battery. You might be rushing to your gate with your hand baggage or 2 packs of hand baggage, so you can't be staring at your phone while you're actually doing that. You just can't use your cell phone or all these digital media devices at all times. So these things are here to stay. The thing that can be pushed forward, though, is the dynamic aspect of the whole thing. They can change, they can adjust, they can change languages, and all of those things.
And so just going back to that quickly then, in the second part of the question, how can we be sure that these passengers are getting the information, especially if they don't actually know how to self-identify their need for help?
How can you be sure? You mean I'm going to have to turn this back against you. Are you referring to the mobile, let's say the mobile digital device users, or are you referring to people who just are staring at the screens, say?
So people that, how can we be sure that people who never use smartphones, tablets, how do we ensure that they receive all the correct information?
So I guess that there's no way to guarantee exactly that somebody was looking at a screen. The only thing that you can, I guess, effectively do is monitor the passenger flow and unfortunately do the same things that you were doing up to this point, where these personalized communication channels were not working. The only thing that you can, I guess, do is maximize the probability of the message reaching the passengers. That means use the displays and the public address efficiently, make it available as much as you can, and zone it properly. Do white zones and all of those things. And again, zone out the airport properly, group together displays, group together public address systems and speakers and all of those things to maximize the chance that this will actually work out. For instance, let me give you an example. One thing that we implemented for our clients is the ability of the gate agent to address, in case of a gate change, the passengers in the zone of the old gate from the new gate. And the idea is that when during your standard operations there is a regulated as a gate change, and the gate staff and the gate agents might go just to the new gate without having to walk to the old gate. And what we did is, and it was specifically for the public address, is that when these gate agents at the new gate try to announce something, the message is not played just in the area of the new gate, because it doesn't make much sense in there, especially the gate change makers, but it can be also played throughout the whole zone and the area connecting between the zone of the old gate and the new gate, thus maximizing the possibility or probability that the passengers, which might be looking for where they should go or somewhere in between, will actually hear the message and go there. Is it a good response?
Yeah, fantastic. So aviation is currently, next question, aviation is currently experiencing an increase in the number of elderly passengers that are traveling. And this results in an airport having to deal with passengers with cognitive, sensory and other mobility challenges. Is Simpleway looking into this issue? How can we cater to these sort of passengers more effectively, do you think?
Yeah. So there are technical solutions to this, and there are process solutions to this. We don't do the process stuff because we're a technological company, but there are really nice implementations of processes, how to take care of elderly passengers, and basically how to announce as an elderly passenger or any sort of passenger heading to the airport will need help. You can include it in their mobile app, you can put it in a website as a form, all of those things, and somebody can pick you up. So that's the process side, but slightly into the technology side. On the other hand, you can work on ADA requirements and all of those things and strive to make it as easy as possible for the passenger to use. And coming completely to a point here, one of the things, for instance, which we were working on with our clients was implementing a hearing loop system, basically the hearing loop which hearing impaired people use to be able to communicate with them, even though they might not hear the standard PA announcement. And the idea was that this hearing loop will be included and zoned per each gate to create a zone system where they would be able to hear the message in that particular zone and basically go through a standard experience as anyone else.
Brilliant. What have been your experiences with mobile channel providers, such as indoor navigation apps, for improving passenger experience? And so what is your role, what is Simpleway's role in such a scenario?
Okay, so first of all, I'll start from the top. So if you look at a mobile app, which is usually custom developed for, or partially custom developed for an airline or airport facility, that app has certain components. And one of the components that might possibly be there is, say, indoor navigation. Or another component is push notifications and the overall content management. The latter is something that we do. Indoor navigation is something that third-party companies do, and there's still quite a bit of them out there. And these guys basically come to your airport and make sure that you have the best possible technology for your use case to enable you to navigate throughout the airport. There are solutions which you can get basically almost for free from, let's say, Google or Apple, which can to some extent provide you indoor geolocation as well, indoor navigation, but those are rudimentary. They might get the job done, but it's nothing that sophisticated as what you can get from indoor navigation providers. And when you as an airport operator are looking to add that feature or create a new app which would include that feature, you would have to identify a bit of these companies and basically figure out which ones work for you and which ones don't work for you. That's our experience. We worked with a couple vendors like that over the last 2 years or 3 years. I think that's where we started looking into that technology. And that market especially is evolving. The indoor navigation market is evolving extremely quickly, and there's a new companies and it's getting consolidated, and the technology is advancing really quickly with the advancements in, say, simultaneous location and mapping and all the technology behind that. It's a really interesting subject, but I don't want to go too deep into technicalities.
No, very, very interesting response. And do you foresee robotics having an important role in increasing passenger experience, quality of passenger experience?
So I've just read an article, like just before this presentation, about Narita Airport introducing a female customer services robot with a text-to-speech voice, and I'm still not sure. I would say that this is my honest response. Robotics has still some way to go, and it is still, when you see it, it's a bit of an uncanny valley thing, especially if they try to do it in a way that it resembles real humans. And the robots, which on the other hand should serve like a purpose in a slightly different manner, say you have a robotic self-checking kiosk or something like that, those make sense because they're tied to a specific use case, whereas robots like that, at this point in time, at the level to which the technology is developed, really, I see them, and I might be wrong, and I'd like to be proven wrong a lot, might be seen just as a gimmick, and that's where I see it.
Yeah, very, very interesting as well. So, next question. Imagine you have an incoming flight where there are many different languages spoken. How do you choose between the different languages in this case?
It depends on the channel. So in reality, you don't really have to choose. Depends on the channel. So let's say you have a flight coming in from somewhere, and you have a certain demographic split, like percentages. So you can say that I'm interested in the 70% of the passengers, which consists of these three languages, and then you can limit it like that and put it on displays and the announcements like this. This is something we're actively doing. But this limitation doesn't apply to the personalized communication channels. You can go all in and basically serve anyone in their mother tongue, in their language they really understand, if you have the personalized channel available at your hand and can talk to them on your mobile phone.
Okay, brilliant. Going back to the indoor positioning topic, what are the advantages and disadvantages of beacon-based indoor navigation technologies and location-based services, do you think?
So again, I just like to point out that we're not super experts in this area, but we certainly have our opinions. So one of the advantages, but I think that was overcome, is that beacons, to do it properly, you have to actually use quite a lot of them. And some airports, and initially and it will still have to happen, use battery-powered iBeacons. And if you actually put out a lot of them out there, you end up having to exchange batteries every 2 years in one. And if you have, and I'll go across the board here, 5,000 of them in the field, that creates quite a operational challenge to actually service all those beacons. So the experience that I have right now is that there's usually a split that they do like 20% electric powered, AC powered, and then they do 80% battery powered, but it's still happening. I guess that works. But on the other hand, it's a good technology, and once you have it in place, and if you're able to maintain it and are prepared to accept the operational expenses which are associated with servicing the technology, you might as well do it. And then, if you have it in place, you can do it. You can use it for a lot more things. I think not just again to help somehow people. For instance, blind people. I think SFO implemented a system to assist blind people navigating through the terminals and things like that. It opens up a huge world of possibilities, obviously.
Okay, great. The next one's not actually a question, but it's kind of more thought-provoking. Talking about a quiet airport, the need of a PA is always necessary by the requirements of the regulatory bodies, so ICAO, IATA, in terms of security and voice alarm evacuation. Do you think this is right?
Yeah, I think it's a fair statement. But the problem is that they don't necessarily say what should be and what has to be announced. So obviously, security and voice alarm evacuation is something that has to be there, and then you're running into all of these other things, whereas, for instance, security and voice alarm has to be a separate PA system in the US, or at least that's what the regulation used to look at. I'm not sure right now. And the complexity grows. But generally speaking, they say that it has to be there, and the building code says it has to be there. So you have to have PA. So I was never actually trying to imply that there are airports trying to get away without the PA hardware. It's just not possible from a life safety and building management perspective. What I meant really is that they're just trying to not to use it at all for standard and regular processes and all of those things. So there's a slight difference.
Okay, thank you very much, Petr. And we have just one final question, but it's not too late if you do have any questions you would like to ask in the meantime, but you get them in quickly, that's all I'm going to say. And so the final question, Petr, is from someone who says, I already have FIDS and a PA system, so why do I need Simpleway?
So
Hello?
I don't know what the code is. But
Okay. Are you there, Petr? Sorry, I think we had a slight connection problem there.
Yeah. So I heard a tone, and my phone just hung up, but I just switched over to my colleague's phone. Can you hear me?
Yep, that's brilliant. Okay, would you like me to re-ask the question quickly?
I already have FIT and PA system. Why do I need Simpleway? So
yeah, perfect. Okay.
I'm going to pick up where I left off. So in theory, you don't. In practice, what you're probably dealing with is two separate systems which behave as individuals. There might be even some integration between them, and for every change that you might want to do to them, you have to coordinate with their vendors and all those things. They don't really have the flexibility to adjust to the number of changes that are happening during, like, let's say, even just a year, on a time window of a year, you're likely to introduce new airlines, new processes, cut off a part of the building, and all of those things are changing. And we can actually do that. We would, thanks to the business rules and the flexibility that we built into our system, we can do those things much more efficiently. It's cheaper to maintain and all of those things. And also, and last but not least, you also have to manage the other channels. What we're talking about here today is utilizing all possible channels for passenger communications. That's the only effective way. So that's the whole idea.
Okay, thank you very much, Petr, and apologies to anyone listening in for that minor connection blip. But I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking Petr Otoupal for his time today and Simpleway. And as we have no further questions, I will wrap up the question and answer session here. And so, on behalf of International Airport Review and Simpleway, I'd like to thank you all for attending this webinar. As you exit, you will then be asked to rate the webinar, and doing so will help us make our webinars even better. Thanks again for your attention, and we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming webinars.
Thank you so much, and everybody have a great day, and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Petr.